On the 13th of August 1945, squadron leader Johnnie Foster brought his squadron to Fairwood Common. During the squadron's 3-week stay, the war in the Far East Pacific came to an end.
I was doing medicine actually in Belfast, Queen's University, and there were 3 of us, and we all doing medicine. We were into our 2nd year medicine. 3 of us determined to fly. The 3 of us wanted to fly. So we joined up together. There was no conscription on that, so we volunteered. And we joined up together, and we were deferred for several months before they called us up. But and then the 3 of us, we split up after initial training. I trained initially at an airfield called Mere in Stafford. Then I went out for SFTS, they called it, in Canada for 2 or 3 months, and then came back to the UK, where I joined the squadron. We did a conversion to accustom us to navigating in the UK, and we did this in Montrose in Scotland on masters, and that was mainly to get us accustomed to navigating in this country. And that was a few weeks, and then we joined the squadron. Then we went to OTU, operational training, in Harden, North Wales, and from there to squadron in Cornwall. I commanded 65 Squadron in Norfolk. This was in August 45. And there was an armament practice camp at Fairwood, as you probably know. And so I brought the squadron down in August to Fairwood for 3 weeks. And we did armament training there just after the war. Funny time to be training for armaments when the war was over. But that's what we did. We had 3 weeks here. And we were firing on towed drogues from Pembrey. But our squadron were down in the western corner. There was a dispersal. And that's where we operated from. There's the control tower. That's all really I remember. Hell of a switchback runway, which still is, I suppose. The officers' mess was where the golf course is now, the golf club. The officers' mess, sick quarters and so on was down in that area. And of course we were young, 12 pilots, 12 aircraft came down. And of course we'd, most evenings we'd go out for a pint to the Commercial in Calais and to Langland Bay Hotel. And that's where I met her, actually. Her cousins brought her down to the bar at the Langland Bay Hotel. We were all in there, packed in, you know, holding your pint here. Yes. Anyway, we met, and her cousins also from Gorsinan. They brought her. So I suppose I dated her and met her the next day or a day or 2 later. And then we went back to Norfolk, an airfield called Hethel, near Wyndham in Norfolk. And I remember she came up and stayed in the local hotel for a few days. And we continued our friendship. Got married in 1946 in Gorsinan, St. Catherine's. A week after we were married, I was posted to Japan. The first 2 years of our marriage, we were separated. In fact, she was prepared to come out to Japan, and they called forward the wives, and they'd built married quarters on Itajima, one of the islands. And a week before she was due to get on the ship, they cancelled it all. And then I came home. We'd been apart about 2.5 years. I came home in 46. And we went back to Norfolk, to Horsham St Faith, back on Spitfires, Hornets, Mosquitoes, we flew.
Prior to 65 Squadron's visit to the practice station, his squadron, equipped with the latest Mustang 4A aircraft, escorted Beaufighter and Mosquito aircraft over the North Sea to the Norwegian coast.
The Mustang, on the other hand, we were mainly operating at fairly low altitudes and air to ground and that sort of thing in Europe. And finally we ended up in Scotland escorting strike wing from Dalkey and Banff, attacking German shipping in Norway. And the Mustang squadrons, we were escorting the Mosquitoes and Beaufighters to Norway and back, which is quite something, about 3.5 hours at low level in the Mustang. That every day in the morning, the Mosquitoes or Beaufighters sent one aircraft over to Norway to find where the shipping was. Incidentally, the shipping was carrying iron ore from Sweden. Sweden provided the iron ore for the Germans. The iron ore was brought over from Sweden to West Norway, put in ships, and taken down to the Baltic, to the German ports there. Now, the Mosquitoes and Beaufighters, their job was to attack the shipping. And so the aircraft went over first thing in the morning, spotted where the shipping was, which fjord and so on it was in, reported back, and then we'd go over with the Mosquitoes and Beaufighters. He'd come back then and tell his wing where the shipping was, and then we'd go over to their airfields, to Banff or Dalkey in Scotland, and get a briefing from them and a combined operation. Then probably in the afternoon, mostly in the afternoon, we'd take them over. Spitfires, he could only do about 1.5 hours maximum, whereas the Mustang, we were, I think the longest trip we did was about 4.5 hours. That's with tank. We dropped them before we got to the Norwegian coast. With quite a hairy time, actually. The Germans had a squadron of Messerschmitts fairly close. I'm trying to think, about halfway up the coast. But they had Messerschmitts there, so they were waiting for us. Our aim was to get below the radar, obviously. The strike wing would carry out their attacks on whatever ships there were, but mostly the ships were escorted by anti-aircraft shipping within their convoy. And so they had a hard time. They had something like a 50% casualty rate. They had. We were fortunate that we didn't lose very many. You aim to within 200 yards, get as close as you can. We'd fly over with the Mosquitoes or Beaufighters, whichever was the case. We'd fly over with them. Then at about 20 miles off the coast, they'd gain height and make for the fjord that they were told by the aircraft in the morning where the shipping was, make for that fjord. We'd escort them, we'd be about 2,000 or 3,000 feet above them, and wait for the Messerschmitts to come in, which they invariably did. And our aim is to keep them off the strike aircraft and try and steer them away from these Mosquitoes and Beaufighters, which wasn't always easy because they had advantage. they'd come in from a high level at high speed. And so we had a job, catching them. Well, we're quite successful, actually. I forget how many we shot down altogether, and I presume that's what I got the DFC for. I did about 600 hours on Spitfires, and about the same on Mustangs, altogether. Some weeks it'll be pretty intense, and then you go for a quiet spell, maybe just 2 or 3 sorties during the week. But it varied, probably about 3 or 4 sorties a week. If we didn't come back with the mosquitoes or bullfighters, because they had navigators on board, so if we were isolated and we'd come back on the reverse course and climb up and get a homing from our airfield, they'd give us a homing, we'd transmit on the radio and they'd give us a homing steer to fly back to base. And there are many occasions, I can tell you, when we're very short of fuel, getting pretty close on occasions. We had IFF, Identification Friend and Foe, which you could switch on, which transmitted a signal to indicate that you were friendly. We were there for 3 months until we came south to Essex, I think 2 or 3 days before VE Day, May. And we in fact celebrated VE Day in Essex. And I think the Poles took over from us. We were at Peterhead in Scotland.
Johnnie Foster went on to lead the RAF Meteor Formation Display Team formed from 263 Squadron, equipped with Meteor aircraft based at RAF Horsham, St. Faith.
We were flying Meteors from Horsham, St. Faith in Norfolk. And a competition was held in Fighter Command to form the RAF aerobatic team. And I was on 263 Squadron, and 4 of us decided to try for this aerobatic troop. And we competed with Vampires, and we managed to win the competition, so we represented the RAF. And in 1950, the King and Queen attended the flying display at Farnborough to celebrate, can't remember what, but we flew in that. That's what that picture's about. And there were 4 of us, as I say, and much more aircraft in the aerobatic team now. But this is the first team after the war.
Group Captain Foster achieved great success and was awarded the AFC for setting up and leading the team in 1950-51.
I was appointed as air attaché in Rome in 1972, and we had 3 years there, which is no great hardship, I might point out, but a very interesting job, actually. And until 75, came back to the UK headquarters in Yorkshire and retired from the RAF in 78, I think it was.